All right, man, peace. Now, one of the narratives, at least one of the storylines that was propagated during last season in the NBA with the Oklahoma City Thunder was whether or not Carmelo Anthony would consider coming off of the bench. And when that question was first broached to Mr. Carmelo Anthony, of course, he laughed it off in his imperious way to try to act as if coming off of the bench was, quote unquote, beneath him. For those of us who remember, right before the season that Carmelo Anthony came into the NBA, Michael Jordan, in his last season with the Washington Wizards, had a few games where he came in off the bench. Yes, the great Michael Jordan came in off the bench. Patrick Ewing, I believe, came in off the bench. Hakeem Olajuwon, I believe, with the Toronto Raptors, came in off the bench. This happens. If I remember correctly, they asked the great Allen Iverson to come in off the bench, and of course he lost his mind. And Carmelo Anthony is very similar to Allen Iverson, and there's a reason why players like that don't win championships. Even though they may inspire awe in their fan base due to their very overpowering cult of personality, they're missing what it takes to win championships, and that involves self-sacrifice. Well, it appears to me that Carmelo Anthony is going to end up having to come off the bench for the Houston Rockets. If not to start the season, at some point in the season, he'll most likely be coming in off the bench, because Mike D'Antoni has implied it. So anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
For SportsCenter right now, I'm Victoria Arlen. Carmelo Anthony is now a Houston Rocket, but the big question remains, will he be coming off the bench? Coach Mike D'Antoni says Melo is open to any possibility.
We'll see at the time, and he's open to it. Like you said, his whole goal is just to win. So he's open to anything. We went through those scenarios. Could happen. I don't know. We got some great players on the team, so it's not a slight.
No, sir. Actually, it is a slight, because you guys only have two great players on your team, that being James Harden and Chris Paul, and neither one of them play the same position as Carmelo Anthony. So for you to state that coming off of the bench may be a scenario that Carmelo Anthony will have to accept, that's you saying that you see that what he brings to the table has fallen off to such a degree that he better not complain. That's all it's about. You know it, and I know it, as Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp would say. Carmelo Anthony is going to have to come in off the bench, and there's nothing that he really can say about it, because he's joining a team that was within one game of going to the NBA Finals last year. So he better fly right.
If somebody comes off bench.
According to our friends at Elias, Carmelo's streak of over 1,000 consecutive starts to begin his career is the second longest streak since the NBA began tracking starts in the 1970-71 season.
I hope that Carmelo does not see this stat, because if he sees this stat, he might say, you know what, I can't come in off the bench. I have to beat Patrick Ewing's record.
Carmelo never came off the bench in his 1 year at Syracuse either. Now let's toss it back to First Take.
Who's ready for Mike D'Antoni, Carmelo Anthony Part 2? Melo making it very clear at OKC that he would not.
That's a good point by Molly Karam, because we know how it ended when Mike D'Antoni was coach of the New York Knicks. Mike D'Antoni never wanted Melo on his team in the first place, and I understood why, because Mike D'Antoni at that time was known for his free-flowing offense, and Carmelo Anthony was known as a ball stopper. Well, the balance of power has clearly shifted over to D'Antoni's side, so Carmelo Anthony's going to have to do what he says.
Not come off the bench, and D'Antoni says he's not sure of that yet. Stephen A., I'll start with you. What do you think? Should Melo be starting?
Look at Stephen A. Smith all caught up in that report. That must be from the Hair Club for Men. Stephen A. Smith, oh man, they had a breakthrough. I'm sorry, what were you saying, Molly?
Should he be coming off the bench?
He should be starting. He's Carmelo Anthony. And the reality is that even though I say that, I recognize the fact that he's not what he used to be. But I cannot emphasize enough, and I'm going to keep regurgitating these same comments throughout the year. It is a different world playing with Chris Paul.
Mm-hmm. We're going to find out.
Chris Paul is one of the greatest point guards of our generation.
Well, I will call him the greatest point guard of this current NBA generation, from the time that he came into the NBA to now. Is he the best point guard in the league today? No. Is he the best pure point guard in the league today? You certainly can make an argument for that. But overall, in evaluating that term, quote-unquote, point guard, conventionally it's considered Steph Curry. But is Steph Curry strictly a point guard? No, not really. But the type of offense that they play, they pretty much ask everyone out there on the floor to be able to pass the ball and shoot the ball. But when we're talking about point guard from the strictest sense of the term, the 1980s, 1990s style point guard, that's Chris Paul, no doubt about it.
And when you talk, everybody, when you think about it, when you talk about Steph Curry, you talk about his jump shooting ability. Not that he can't play point, because obviously he's a damn good point guard, but he's the greatest shooter we've ever seen. When we talk about Russell Westbrook, he's a mercurial superstar who happens to be the greatest athlete we've ever seen playing the point guard position. We used to say that.
Well, right there with Derrick Rose before Derrick Rose got hurt.
Say the same thing about Derrick Rose before those knee injuries decimated him and what have you. But when you talk about Chris Paul, you are literally embracing what a point guard is supposed to be. A floor general, an umbilical cord to the coach, an extension of the coach on the floor. Somebody who knows what everybody's job is, not just his own, and knows how to maximize the potential of all the pieces around him. When you play with Chris Paul, it is a different world. Look at the Clippers with him. Look at the Clippers without him. Look at DeAndre Jordan with him. Look at DeAndre Jordan without him. Look at Blake Griffin with them. Look at Blake Griffin without him. There's a different world, and they can play. But Chris Paul is something special. And then you combine the close relationship that they have.
I agree with you, Steve, not to cut you off, but I would certainly have Chris Paul in the top 5 greatest little men to ever play in the NBA. He's up there somewhere. I still have him after John Stockton, of course, and after Isaiah Thomas. But I will have to go through the list to see exactly who he's behind. But he's certainly up there.
With one another, because they're tighter with each other. As much as we talk about the Banana Boat crew with D-Wade, LeBron, Chris Paul, Melo. Remember that Melo and CP3 are incredibly tight. You add to that the greatness of James Harden, who is nothing short of great, by the way. You take that into account and you...
Well, he's great offensively in the regular season, sure.
And you look at Mike D'Antoni's system, which feeds more offense, not necessarily more defense, even though they were better defensively last year than any team had been in the Mike D'Antoni era of coaching. And I just say it all spells a plus for Melo. You don't demoralize and dissipate the enthusiasm and the momentum of that situation by putting Melo on the bench. You don't do that.
The reality is he's probably going to start for a lot of the season because they need a small forward. Or a power forward. They need another forward to play.
I agree with you, Max Kellerman, which is why it makes it even more conspicuous that Mike D'Antoni will leave the door open on Carmelo Anthony coming in off the bench. Because I think that Mike D'Antoni suspects that there's going to be a point in this up-and-coming NBA regular season where Carmelo Anthony is going to reach an impasse with James Harden, where James Harden may come into Mike D'Antoni's office unbeknownst to Carmelo and say, you know what, Mike, this is just not really working out with Carmelo. He does not quite fit in with what we're trying to do offensively, and he's not good enough on defense to hide the fact that I'm not looking to have to go 100% on defense every possession. Now I have to cover for him. And that's something else that they're missing out on in regards to the loss of Trevor Ariza and Luke Mbah-a-Moute. They allowed James Harden, who played better defense last year, to be able to take plays off here and there. Now with Carmelo Anthony out there on the floor, James Harden's going to be able to take off on defense far less. So I believe that that's the reason why Mike D'Antoni left the door open for Carmelo Anthony to eventually have to come in off the bench, because for him to say, well, we have a lot of talented guys on the team, like, Mike, really? So who are you going to be platooning Carmelo Anthony with at the 3 spot that we're supposed to consider this great talent? PJ Tucker? Really what you're saying is that you see that Carmelo Anthony has dropped off so precipitously on offense, and we know that he can't play defense, that you're suspecting that there may be some young talent on your team that may bring more to the floor than Carmelo Anthony does. But once again, we're going to find out.
To play with Tucker, right? Like you
and Tucker's there for defense. Tucker's there for defense and spot up threes.
He is 3-and-D plus because like he can shoot the three, and his defense is special and his defensive intensity is special. Tucker.
PJ Tucker would be a hell of an analyst. I don't know if you've ever spoken to him.
I have spoken to him.
This guy, I mean, when he talks basketball, it's impressive. He's going to be on TV someday.
There aren't that many guys who can legitimately fit onto all 5 positions and hold their own. He's one of them. He's extremely valuable to that team. But the point is, so he's probably going to start a lot.
Right.
But ideally, he wouldn't start. Ideally, he wouldn't. Carmelo's defense is not good enough to start, in my opinion, particularly on a D'Antoni team. You say, well, D'Antoni's not known for defense. That's why you need, like, ideally, Carmelo's role is a 3-and-D guy. He is not a great catch-and-shoot guy, as we saw from his experience last year.
Once again, that is why Mike D'Antoni never liked him, because he needs players that can catch and shoot. That's what makes Chris Paul so great. He can shoot off the dribble or off the catch. Carmelo Anthony needs the ball in his hands. He needs to dribble, take those long, circuitous routes to the basket, go in between the legs with that old man YMCA game, and it slows down everything. That's why he does not fit into this current style of the NBA.
He's a great all-around offensive player, but just the kind of guy who comes off the bench, gives you 15 minutes of, microwave. But that's not what's going to wind up happening. Let me tell you, though, why, Stephen A., your Chris Paul point doesn't make a difference. Because James Harden and Chris Paul on the same team allows D'Antoni to do two things. One, he can play Chris Paul off the ball a lot when he's on the floor with
That's
James
why Chris
Harden.
Paul came.
Right.
Because he wanted
And he is a great scorer, Chris Paul, a great scorer. But when James Harden's on the bench, which happens X number of minutes a game, Chris Paul is the primary ball handler, always, right, if Harden's on the bench. So you're going to get run, if you're Carmelo, with Harden and Paul and both at different times in the game, even if you're coming off the bench, which ideally he would. The reason he's going to start is because the Rockets are a little short-handed at forward right now, not because ideally he would start.
Here's where the problem in your analysis falls short. Of course, Ariza being gone, you've got Carmelo that's going to fill in for that, and Luke Mbah-a-Moute. When you had Luke Mbah-a-Moute along with Ariza, along with P.J. Tucker, who are not scorers. P.J. Tucker's a spot-up shooter. Trevor Ariza could spot-up shoot. But essentially, their ability to score was facilitated by CP3 along with James Harden, who were interchangeable at the point guard, shooting guard spots because they could do both. The problem with it is this. Because those guys were gone, the reason why they were better defensively, they had no choice but to be because of the roles that you are. Your game predicated that. With Carmelo Anthony, you can be more offensive-minded, which feeds into what D'Antoni coaches best.
Allegedly, if you're Carmelo Anthony, you can be more offensive-minded because it feeds into what Mike D'Antoni is doing best. But once again, Stephen A. Smith, it's not just about offense per se. It's about the style of offense. And Carmelo Anthony's style of offense just does not jibe with Mike D'Antoni's idea of what offense should look like. Carmelo has never been a proficient scorer. He's always been a volume shooter. And when you look at Chris Paul, who plays point guard, Chris Paul has a career higher shooting field goal percentage than Carmelo Anthony does. So I think that speaks volumes in regards to shot selection. Now, people might say, well, Carmelo Anthony shoots around the same percentage as James Harden. That's true, but James Harden's offensive repertoire is much more consistent with what is asked of a great offensive player in today's NBA than Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony wants the ball. He wants to dribble for 4 or 5 seconds and then pull up for a long 2-point shot. James Harden's going to go in between the legs 5,000 times and then pull up for a 3. That's the difference.
And that is why, and not only that, combine that with the motivation that Melo has, because so many people have been counting him out and acting like his career is over. This brother with CP3, that motivation, that system, I'm sorry. I think they're going to be potent offensively. I really do.
I read recently.
We'll see. I think that they're going to be very potent in the regular season, but I do think that they're going to have their difficulties in the postseason. I think that the OKC Thunder are going to be much better this year, especially defensively, especially after re-signing Paul George. And I think that they're going to try to pursue Kevin Love at some point near the trading deadline. Utah is going to be better. And, of course, you have the Lakers. So we'll see. The Rockets will be tested. I would love to see the Lakers versus the Rockets in the second round of the playoffs and Golden State versus OKC. I think that would be great for the NBA.
Recently, I'm sorry I can't cite the source, where Carmelo Anthony, when isolated in the pick and roll, turns whoever has isolated him into like among the top 2 or 3 most efficient scorers in the league. In other words, he will be picked on defensively. Yep. And to great advantage for the other team.
And he's going to be expected to try to guard Kevin Durant.
That is going to happen. Even on a team with James Harden, Carmelo Anthony is now the weak link on defense.
Ding. That's the best point that you've made thus far, Max Kellerman. That's why I stated that I believe that there's going to be some discord between James Harden and Carmelo Anthony over the course of this season, especially once James Harden realizes how Carmelo Anthony's bad defense is going to impact him on the defensive end, because he's not going to be able to rest as much on the defensive end.
So I think we all agree that he'll likely start. He might not always finish games. That'll be dependent on production, matchup.
They say the same thing about Harden. So if you're an opposing team, you're picking your poison. Maybe they ain't gonna pick on Carmelo. Maybe they'll pick on Harden too.
We got to.
No, sir. I guarantee you they're going to be picking on Carmelo Anthony. It's just that James Harden will be another alternative, but they're definitely going to be picking on Carmelo Anthony. But we'll see. We shall definitely see. So peace.